Hi again, everyone. I'm 2 News Chief Meteorologist Brett Anthony. This edition of WeatherWise, we're going to cover the second half of September, a forecast here. Of course, we base it on the LRC, or the Lezak recurring cycle theory. The trouble with this second part of the month here is that the old pattern will be fading, a new pattern is developing. And so really what we're going to have to rely on for this is more so, I think, the computer data that's coming out to give us some guidance, because the old cycle is just kind of washing away. It's still little remnants there, but I'm not sure that we can count on it a whole lot. Maybe the warm-up at the end of the month is certainly related to the old cycle. All right, so September so far, warmer, wetter. We had a high of 98 back on September 7th. We cooled off to 52 on September 12th. So far for the month, the temperatures are running about 2.5 degrees above average, and the rainfall is about 1/2 inch above average. All right, so let's look at the jet stream. Remember that the atmosphere is three-dimensional, so what happens down on the surface is often reflected, and we are looking at the winds aloft, and these are the winds at about 18,000 feet up, or about halfway up through the atmosphere, and they steer the storm systems, and they also tell us where the division between the cool air and the warm air is going to be. So there's the jet stream, and it's set up just like that, and there's a lot of warm air over the southeastern part of the country. So I'll put this into motion. We'll go into this weekend. We'll have a little storm go by, a couple rain chances, and then we see our winds are generally west to east, so we should have some near average temperatures to start next week. But then look what happens. Remember, the main branch of the jet is still way up here across the U.S.-Canadian border, or close to it, and we've got this warm air aloft, a ridge, building back in, and in fact it expands, and it expands to cover almost the eastern or southern third to two-thirds of the country. So that's a lot of warm air that builds back in for the end of the month. So we'll likely have a 90-degree day again before September is over. So here's what I'm expecting for the second half of September. Rainfall should be near or slightly below average. The temperature should be above average, considering that ridge built in. So as we go through the rest of this week and into the weekend, we cool down thanks to the frontal boundary here. So you'll see we're down into the upper 70s this weekend. And then we start warming back up around the 22nd. We'll start to warm back up as that warm air builds into the midsection of the country. So we're in the upper 80s, low 90s through the 27th, 28th. And then, oddly enough, the data is pointing towards some kind of tropical system. A little tropical disturbance moves across Texas. Perhaps it's just a little disturbance that moves out of the tropics or out of the Gulf of Mexico and brings some moisture with it. So rain chances seem to be back on the increase toward the end of the month. Of course, I want to remind you, the new pattern will begin to set up at the beginning of October, and then that pattern will start to establish itself, and then it'll begin to repeat once it gets set up. Last year's pattern was 47 days. We'll see how this pattern is established, but it should be established somewhere between the middle part of November and the end of November, and then again it starts to cycle, and then we can make long-range predictions based on the weather pattern that we see developing across the United States. Thanks for watching this edition of WeatherWise.